Well, the South Carolina Republican Party's biggest yearly fundraiser returned to the Midlands last night. Hundreds of people were at the Columbia Convention Center for the 57th Annual Silver Elephant Gala. Our Sam Shapiro shares the achievements the party is celebrating this year and their outlook for the November general election.
The Silver Elephant Gala is one of the longest running fundraising events held by the SC GOP. Several prominent figures in Palmetto State Republican politics spoke, commemorating what the party has achieved over the last year and expressing optimism that former President Donald Trump will defeat Vice President Kamala Harris this fall. Many of the Republicans at the Silver Elephant Gala Saturday night were celebrating what they say has been great success in the last year. SC GOP Chairman Drew McKissick also touting that this past election cycle was the strongest statewide for Republicans in over a century. He is not worried about November and about the enthusiasm that Kamala Harris is garnering on the national stage in the last month.
South Carolina Republicans have beat Democrats on straight ticket voting the last 4 election cycles in a row. Every year by a greater margin. It was 2% in 16, 8% in 18, 17% in 20, 27% in 22. We're looking for another great year on straight ticket voting to help our candidates all the way down to the local level.
Governor Henry McMaster also spoke to the hundreds at Saturday night's gala. He said former President Donald Trump's will to keep going is admirable, and because of that, he believes Palmetto State Republicans should stand united behind him.
Babe Ruth said you can't beat a person who never gives up. That brings us to Donald Trump. There's nothing else they can do to the man. He will not quit, and neither will we.
Representative Corey Mills was the keynote speaker. The Army combat veteran and Bronze Star recipient agreed with McMaster, also voicing how he believes the party should unite around Trump.
The infighting that goes on during our primaries is great when we support someone, but it's time to unite, it's time to come together, and it's time to win this nation. Let us get back to allowing President Donald J. Trump to make America great again.
Former President Donald Trump was the keynote speaker at the event last year, where roughly 1,300 people came to hear him speak. Reporting in the newsroom, Sam Shapiro, WIS News 10.